Ever get that feeling? Like you're really into a topic, you want to dive deep, but, who has the time to wade through mountains of articles and books?
Yeah, totally. We get it.
That's where we come in. Right here on the Deep Dive, we're all about taking those deep dives for you. Today, we're heading to Germany. Mainz, to be exact. It might seem like just another city, but trust me, it's got this seriously ancient past, just waiting to be uncovered.
Absolutely. I mean, just imagine underneath all the modern stuff, the city's got roots that go right back to the Roman Empire. Pretty cool, huh?
Super cool. And to do it right, we've pulled together a whole bunch of sources for this one. We've got articles from Stars and Stripes. Those guys always have a good take on things. Plus some really detailed historical stuff from Livius.org.
And for a little extra academic punch, we're even dipping into a publication called Das Rhine-Main-Gebiet in der Spätantike. Don't worry about the German title. We'll break it all down for you. Basically, it means the Rhine-Main area in late antiquity, so it's got all the late Roman stuff covered.
Exactly. So what we're trying to do with this deep dive is to sift through all this material, pick out the coolest, most interesting parts, and give you a clear picture of Mainz's Roman history, how it began, what went down, and what traces of it are still around today. We might even uncover some aha moments along the way.
I think there'll be a few of those.
Fingers crossed. Okay, so let's rewind all the way back, back to the very beginning. Our sources tell us the Romans first showed up in the Mainz area around 57 or 56 BCE. This was during Caesar's Gallic Wars. Remember those?
Yeah, classic Caesar, conquering Gaul and all that.
And this was a huge deal because it was basically the moment the Romans decided to make the Rhine River the frontier of their world.
Like, this is where Rome ends, folks.
Exactly. But here's the thing. The area wasn't exactly empty before the Romans rocked up.
Nope, not at all. Celtic people were already living there. And get this, the Romans actually kept the name the Celts had for the place. Mogontiacum.
So they didn't even try to rename it.
Not this time. Maybe they like the sound of it. But there's a good chance it's named after Mogon, a Celtic god associated with health.
That's pretty interesting. Right from the start, you've got this mixing of cultures.
Yeah, right there in the name.
And it's not like the Romans just picked any old spot, right?
Right. I mean, geographically, Mainz was like the perfect spot.
Prime real estate?
It's right where the Rhine and Main rivers meet, so super important for trade and, of course, military maneuvers.
Like a Roman highway intersection.
Exactly. Now, zoom in on Augustus's campaign in Germania. Around 13 BCE, his adopted son, Drusus, really cemented the Roman presence in Mainz.
By building a big old military base.
Yep, a major one. It became like their HQ for pushing eastward, especially against these guys called the Mariasi tribe.
So we're not talking about a couple of tents and a campfire here. This was a proper, serious military operation.
Oh yeah, full-on Roman style. And when I say proper, I mean proper. They built this huge wooden fortress, a castra. They weren't messing around. They built it at a place still known as Kestrich, and it was massive. It could house 2 entire legions.
2 whole legions. That's, what, like 10,000 soldiers?
Something like that. Maybe the 1st Legion Germanica and the 5th Legion Aulata were among the first stationed there.
And it wasn't just soldiers, right?
Of course not. Where there are soldiers, there are people to, keep things running.
The support staff of the Roman Empire.
Basically. You'd have had existing native villages nearby, plus all the people who came to trade or offer services, and, crucially, a river port. Gotta keep those legions supplied.
Speaking of supplies, imagine the logistics of feeding and equipping thousands of soldiers, day in, day out.
What a nightmare. Luckily, the Romans were masters of logistics. By around 4 CE, they'd even built a pontoon bridge across the Rhine to help move things faster.
A pontoon bridge, like a floating bridge. That's
Yeah.
pretty impressive for the time.
They were good at that kind of stuff. And the bridgehead on the other side, they called it Castellum Matiocorum, really shows you how seriously they were taking this whole Rhine frontier thing.
So all this points to Mainz being a pretty major military hub for the Romans, right? But what kind of hard evidence do we actually have?
Well, one of the best pieces of evidence we have are tombstone inscriptions.
Tombstones. How do those tell us about the military?
These aren't just any tombstones. They belong to Roman soldiers, and they're full of details about who these guys were, where they came from, and what they did.
Like little biographies carved in stone.
Exactly. And after that massive defeat at the Teutoburg Forest in 9 CE, we see that legions 4th Gemina and 6 Gallica were stationed in Mainz, probably sent there to beef up defenses.
Right, because the Teutoburg Forest was a total disaster for the Romans, wasn't it? They lost 3 whole legions there.
A complete humiliation.
So these tombstones tombstones, they're like windows into the lives of these Roman soldiers.
Exactly. Take Gnaeus Mucius, for example. He was a standard bearer for the 14th Legion. His tombstone actually shows him with the signum, the standard.
The one with the eagle on top.
That's the one. And it really highlights how important those standards were to the Roman military. They were like sacred symbols of the legion.
So it was a huge honor to be the standard bearer.
Absolutely a big deal. And we even learn from his tombstone that he served for 15 years and died at the age of 32. A life dedicated to the Roman army.
Wow. And then there's Titus Pompeius from the 16th Legion. His tombstone tells us he was from Viana in Rhaetia. And get this, there's even a clue about how Latin might have been pronounced in Roman Mainz.
Oh, what's that?
Well, the inscription uses airs instead of hears for air.
Interesting. So like a little pronunciation quirk?
Maybe. It's these little details that make history come alive.
For sure. And the impact of the Teutoburg Forest defeat is super clear when you look at the tombstones of some of the reinforcements sent to Mainz.
Reinforcements.
For other parts of the empire. Yep. We have Publius Urbanus from the 13th Legion Gemina. Normally they would have been miles away. And then there's Gaius Julius Niger from the 2nd Legion Augusta, who probably saw action in Spain before being shipped up to the Rhine.
So they were really pulling troops from all over to bolster the Rhine frontier.
No doubt. And they were so committed to the region that they even set up a 2nd Legionary base at Weisenau, just south of Mainz.
So it was like a double dose of Roman military might.
You got it. And later, during Caligula's campaigns in the early 40s CE, we even see legions Ex Vita and XD6 Primigenia popping up in Mainz.
Another change-up of legions. And this is where we come across Lucius Varius Sacco.
Ah, yes. His tombstone tells us he died after just a year of service. Maybe he was killed in action. It's a stark reminder of the human cost of these military campaigns.
It really puts things in perspective. By the mid-1st century CE, Legions III Macedonica and XD2 Primigenia were stationed in Mainz. So much turnover.
A lot of movement, for sure. And all those soldiers in Mainz, they played a role in Roman politics, too.
You mean they weren't just sitting around polishing their armor?
Nope. The Rhine army garrison actually supported Vitellius during his revolt in 69 CE.
So they got involved in Roman civil wars.
Oh, yeah. Things could get pretty chaotic. And then there was the Batavian Revolt, where the rebels actually managed to capture Mainz, although the legionary base itself held out.
So Mainz was caught right in the middle of all this turmoil.
Front and center. But the Romans were pretty good at bouncing back. Once Vespasian took control, Mainz was fortified even more.
And new legions, Utrix and the returning Exfugisamina, were stationed there after 70 CE.
Yep. And the military action kept on coming. Under Domitian, around 83 CE, there were more campaigns against the Chatti. We even see Legion X Arcrapax in the mix. And this is probably when those impressive Mainz pedestals were erected.
The pedestals, what are those exactly?
They're these monumental inscriptions, probably celebrating Roman victories and power. Think big stone propaganda.
Ah, so a bit of Roman bragging carved in stone.
You could say that. And all this military activity in the region eventually led to a big administrative shakeup.
How so?
Well, after 89 CE, the whole military zone was reorganized into the province of Germania Superior. And guess what?
Mainz became the capital.
Bingo! And for a while, Execumina Primigenia was the only legion stationed there. But as we move into the 2nd century CE, things start to change.
How so? Do the legions leave?
Not completely, but we see Mainz becoming more of a civilian center, fewer military inscriptions and all that.
So it was evolving beyond just a military base.
Right. More stability, more integration.
And with all those soldiers around for so long, it's no surprise that a vibrant civilian life started to develop in Mainz. They even built a Roman theater. And it's not just any old theater either, is it?
Oh, no, this one's pretty special. They actually found it while expanding the railway station in the late 1990s.
Talk about a surprise discovery.
Seriously, they were digging around and suddenly, boom, Roman theater. And not a small one either. This thing could seat up to 10,000 people.
10,000? That's like a major concert venue.
No kidding. And what's really cool is they actually incorporated the ruins into the modern train station. You can literally be standing on the platform waiting for your train and be right next to what was once the stage.
Wow, that's amazing. Talk about a blend of ancient and modern. And that's not the only hidden gem in Mainz. What about that Isis and Mater Magna shrine they found?
Oh, yeah, that was a pretty wild discovery, too. They found it in the early 2000s while building a shopping mall right in the heart of the city next to the cathedral.
A Roman shrine under a shopping mall. That's crazy.
Totally unexpected. And the fact that they found these Eastern deities there, Isis and Mater Magna, it's not just a random thing.
What does it tell us?
Well, it shows you just how far the reach of the Roman Empire was. Mainz might have been a frontier city, but it was still very much connected to the wider Roman world.
Like a cultural crossroads?
Exactly. And you can imagine Roman soldiers and traders far from home finding comfort in these familiar deities. It gives you a glimpse into their personal lives. And there are even inscriptions that mention dedications by freedmen, which shows you there was some social mobility in Roman society.
You could work your way up, even in the Roman army.
Mm.
And just like with the theater, they preserved part of the shrine.
Yeah, there's an underground hall beneath the shopping mall where you can see some of the remains. Pretty awesome, huh?
It's incredible what's hidden under our feet sometimes.
Mm.
And speaking of things we can still see today, what about those Roman rocks?
Ah, the Romerstein. Those are pretty hard to miss. They're the remnants of a Roman aqueduct built around 70 CE. They look like big piles of rocks now, but they were once part of this amazing feat of engineering.
Imagine the effort it took to build an aqueduct back then.
Massive undertaking. This one was miles long, and it brought something like 8,000 gallons of fresh water to the military camps and baths every single day.
8,000 gallons. That's a lot of water.
And it shows you how seriously the Romans took things like sanitation and infrastructure, even out on the frontier.
They weren't just roughing it.
Not at all. And then we have Drusus Stone, which is thought to be the oldest building ruin in Mainz. It was originally a memorial tower dedicated to Drusus the Elder.
The guy who helped establish the Roman base there.
That's the one. They built it using opus caementitium, an early type of Roman concrete. Super strong and durable.
Is that the same kind of concrete they used for the Colosseum and all those other massive Roman structures?
Yeah, pretty much. It was a game changer for Roman construction. And later on, Drusus' stone was even used as a watchtower. It stands today as a testament to Roman building skills.
And if you're interested in the Roman Navy, you have to check out the Museum of Ancient Seafaring in Mainz.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. In the 1980s, they found 5 Roman warships in the harbor, perfectly preserved in the mud.
5 warships. What were they doing in the harbor?
Well, the Rhine was a major waterway for the Romans. They used these ships for transporting troops and supplies, but also for fighting.
So it wasn't just legions marching around. They had a whole navy on the Rhine.
That's right. And the ships weren't just simple boats either. They were complex, purpose-built warships.
You can really picture those Roman ships sailing up and down the Rhine. And then there's the Roman gate they found at Castrych in 1982.
Ah, yes. With the reliefs showing Roman soldiers and German prisoners.
Probably a depiction of Domitian's victory over the Chatti.
Most likely. Another reminder of the constant military struggles on the frontier.
And it wasn't all about the military. They found this really elaborate gravestone, the Weisnauer-Gartner gravestone, from around 50 CE.
That one's pretty interesting because it belonged to a wealthy civilian, not a soldier.
So there were already people making a good living in Roman Mainz, even in those early days.
Absolutely. It shows you that civilian life was developing alongside the military presence. But as we move into the 3rd century CE, things start to get a bit shaky for the Roman Empire.
In what way?
Well, the frontiers were under increasing pressure from Germanic tribes. The whole Roman world was facing challenges.
So the good times were coming to an end.
You could say that. We even see emperors like Caracalla visiting Mainz during this period.
Probably to check on the defenses and make sure everything was in order.
Makes sense. And in 259 CE, they decided to build city walls around the civilian settlement in Mainz.
Sounds like they were getting worried.
They had good reason to be. And these walls weren't built in the same way as the earlier Roman structures.
How were they different?
Well, they used a lot of recycled materials. Basically, they were repurposing whatever they could find to build these walls quickly.
That sounds like a sign of the times, like they were running out of resources.
It's definitely a sign of the pressure they were under. And to make matters worse, Mainz got caught up in the chaos of the Gallic Empire.
The Gallic Empire. That was a breakaway part of the Roman Empire, right?
That's right. It was a time of serious instability. But even with all that going on, Mainz remained a significant center.
So life went on, even in the midst of all this upheaval.
Absolutely. We see evidence of rebuilding, like the repairs to the theater. And this is also the period when Christianity started to spread in Mainz. The first bishop, Marianus, was appointed around 345.
So a time of change and transition.
You got it. But ultimately, the pressure on the Roman frontier proved too much.
Is this when things really start to fall apart for Roman Mainz?
Yeah, sadly. Mainz was captured and sacked by the Alamans in 368.
Those were Germanic tribes, right?
Yep, and then just a few decades later, in 406 or 407, it was sacked again, this time by the Vandals.
So basically back-to-back sackings. Not a good time to be living in Mainz.
Not at all. And these events really mark the end of the Roman era in Mainz.
The end of an era.
Pretty much, although it wasn't a sudden collapse, more like a gradual decline and transformation.
And this is where those academic sources like das Rhine and Main Gebiet in der Spätantik come in, right?
Exactly. They give us a more nuanced view of this period.
So it wasn't just a case of the Romans packing up and leaving overnight.
Nope. The archaeological evidence suggests that people continued to live in Mainz even after the sackings.
So life went on, but it was different.
Right, and there's even evidence that Mainz Castel, the area on the other side of the Rhine, might have become more important during this later period.
Why is that?
Well, it was the site of the original Roman fortress, so maybe it was seen as a more defensible location. There's even a possibility that the legionary command was moved there.
So Roman Mainz shifted across the river.
It's a possibility. And we also find late Roman cemeteries, Gräberfelder, in Mainz. These give us clues about the people who were living there at the time and how they buried their dead.
Fascinating. And what about that big Roman theater? What happened to it?
Good question. It might have continued to be used in some form or another, maybe even transformed for other purposes.
So it wasn't just abandoned and forgotten.
Not necessarily. It's more likely that it was adapted to the changing times.
So just to recap, we've journeyed from Mainz's beginnings as a Roman military base, Mogontiacum, through its development as a bustling civilian center, to its eventual transformation in late antiquity.
It's been quite a journey, and we've seen some pretty amazing things along the way, haven't we?
Absolutely. That Roman theater hidden under the train station is mind-blowing. And who would have thought they'd find a Roman shrine under a shopping mall?
It's amazing what you can find when you start digging. And those Roman rocks, those are a pretty impressive reminder of Roman engineering skills.
Definitely. And those tombstones, they really give you a sense of the lives of those Roman soldiers.
Absolutely. They make history come alive.
It's been a real deep dive into the Roman history of Mainz. And it just goes to show you that there's often more to a place than meets the eye.
Couldn't agree more.
So next time you're walking around your own city or town, take a moment to think about what might be hidden beneath your feet. You never know what stories are waiting to be uncovered.
Exactly. Maybe there's a Roman ruin or an ancient cemetery just waiting to be discovered, or maybe something even older.
That's the beauty of history. It's all around us, just waiting to be explored.
And sometimes all it takes is a little curiosity and a willingness to dig a little deeper to uncover something truly amazing.
So go out there and explore. You never know what you might find. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Roman Mainz.
Until next time.